Welcome to Bitcoin Escape Plan. There is a lot happening on the chart right now that you are not going to want to miss out on. I'm going to start off all of these videos as usual with the 4-hour chart, and then we will get into the higher time frames. Give me a couple minutes to ramble about the 4-hour just for anyone who is here early on the video. Thank you so much, by the way. Like and subscribe. And then I will get into the higher time frames and explain and break down exactly what is going on for Bitcoin at the moment. So, right now on the 4-hour chart, we just failed a major pivot. I actually was writing about this on the newsletter, which you can go see linked down in the description. Just released the first one. And basically what we're going to wait for now is a retest of right here, 85.8K, which is just below. This is a level I've talked about multiple times before, 86.1K, which is a previous weekly close. So pretty important to see kind of how price reacts between those two. That'll indicate whether we have some strength and a potential bounce back, or if we are going to need to continue pushing lower. Two levels that I'll talk about later on in the video. So at the moment, it is a lot of downside pressure below those pivots, so we don't really have immediate hope of coming to the upper side or reclaiming the 4-hour SMA, which we've already lost the daily, which again, I'll talk about later. But that's what we're looking for at the moment is a retest of 85.8 and to see if we have some strength around 86.1K. Both levels I've talked about many, many times before. All right. So if we go, we're going to save the daily for last. So we're going to go to the monthly time frame. And again, I go over this all in the newsletter. You can check it out. First one down below. So over here, we have broken the monthly SMA again. Obviously, we wicked below it last month, and then we closed above it. But as I've talked about in previous videos, I'm just going to continue to ramble the exact same thing. I think it's most likely that we are going to chop this month, next month, and February all along this SMA as the SMA starts to curve downward. There's a possibility that it continues to go up, and then obviously I have to reassess that. But I don't think so. I think we're more likely in the part of the cycle. Hold on, let me get rid of some of these drawings. I think we're more likely in this part of the cycle right here. And even if we look back to further in this cycle, same thing. We still interact with it multiple times. And that's what we really want to be looking for. In this particular case, the SMA continued to rise and flatten out during that time period, even though it was clear, price has already started its descent. And if we take in the broader context of what's happening, because it's all well and good to talk about price, right? To study it as if it's the only indicator of what this thing is. But the reality is, at some point over here, doesn't matter where the price is, money is going to flow into the market with the stable coins. Billions and billions of dollars and eventually trillions of dollars is going to flow into the markets via the ability to move much more rapidly and quickly than money has been previously moving for large money transfers with wire transfers and stuff like that. People are going to be able to do that with stablecoins instantly. That is going to change the nature of how all markets move, not just how crypto moves. And crypto will probably see some of that initially just because it's a 24-hour market and not everything else is a 24-hour market. So it's going to get pretty squirrely next year. I'm not saying that just because it's going to break lower, that's what I think. I think we're going to retest somewhere between here, 52 and 75-ish, some point over the course of next year. But just because that happens does not mean that we're done. It doesn't even mean it's a bad thing. It just means that there's a lot of money, trillions of dollars that are going to be printed over the next couple of years, and they're going to need to flow into markets where it's easily manipulated. And unfortunately, Bitcoin is going to be easily manipulated. Gold, for example, it's pretty much just been continuing to rise and rise and rise. And eventually will start to end that trend. S&P, kind of same thing. S&P has been rising and rising and rising, and eventually will probably retest some of these levels, but not really anywhere in sight. There's no reason to believe that at the moment. It's just long and strong on all of those other cases. So the broader context for Bitcoin is that it will recover, but it's spending too much time below key levels. This is the weekly, by the way. I changed over to the weekly. It's spending way too much time below key levels to really be showing any sign of a higher high, which I know there's so many people who talk about that all the time. That's what they want to see. They want to see a higher high right now. They want to see, a reclaim of 126 and higher. And I just don't see it. I don't see it represented by the chart. We're more likely to retest 80K, like I talked about in the newsletter, than we are to retest 106.7K. And I think a best case scenario for us right now is if we can show strength around here at the anchored volume profile point of control at like 96K, then there's a possibility we get that rise up to here, assuming we can fill this big old gap between 99 and 101 at the moment. Huge gap. A bunch of people must have got liquidated on the way down with that previously. That's the only thing that's going to give us conviction and permission to jump that 106.7K, but I don't think so. I talked about when we were going to break 100K for a long time about what that was going to do to the market psychologically. It's all over my threads. You can scroll back for a long time and see all that. But, the reality is at the moment, we have the anchor volume profile, and I've talked about this before, the anchored VWAP right here. I know there's a lot of things on the chart. That level and that level, unless we show strength between those 2 points, it's just not going to happen. We're not going to see any type of major reversal on the price if it can't hold strong between those points. It's just going to continue to drop lower and try and see how far we can go. How thin are we at these levels that need to be filled back up before we're willing to go higher? Because most of the volume is here. It's between 83 and 96 at the moment, which is not indicative that we're just going to randomly rocket higher. So people are delusional when they say that. This is the daily time frame. We'll wrap it up with this. So what we're really looking for, this is the one, I talk about this in the newsletter. This is like one thing that's like potentially a good sign at the moment. We talked about this many times. About 80K was the pivot for weekly and monthly, and we did hold it, at that end of November. What's happened on the daily time frame, however, is we are seeing the 82.3K pivot open up, which obviously is higher than 80K. So there's some possibility that if we can show support and strength there, that we won't need to retest lower. But as you can see, 75.1K has also opened up. So there's nothing really preventing us from breaking down to that, If we can't show strength at this guy, at least on the daily time frame, we would still need a retest of that 80K. But this is going to be an important region that I think we see in the next couple of days, and it's not going to be the opposite direction because we didn't show strength at 94. There's a possibility. 86.1K we've talked about a bunch of times. It's not really the strongest level. I talk about it on the weekly time frame in the newsletter. It's a previous weekly close towards the top of the range. I'll go find it real quick for you. Over this guy. It's in March. So it's like we're on our way to a retest and then we fail. But it is essentially like the first failed retest. So right here we closed above it, but we're going to want to test it again. And I just think that's going to tell us a lot about the trend right after that. It's going to tell us, okay, well, if that one failed, then we got to come to this one. 80.7K, which I think we've talked about before. It might have been 80.8 or 80.9. I think that was a lower time frame pivot for a while. And then this guy here, which is, what is that? 80.5, which, yeah, we've talked about a bunch of times as well. That's pretty much right where that wick is. So that's what I would be paying attention to in the immediate term is, do we show strength at 82.3K above 80.8K roughly? Because if not, we're going to retest 75. And quite frankly, if we're already there, there's just very little that's going to prevent us from continuing the trend lower. I know that is not what you want to hear. I go over all of this in quicker detail in the newsletter. Please go subscribe. I've been talking about that for a long time. Thank you guys so much for all your support over here and on Threads. My plan is on Mondays, I'm basically just going to do a summary of the newsletter. I will get better at it over time. And then, yeah, the rest of the week will kind of just be updates on that. The books will be up very shortly. If they're not up right now, you can refresh it later today, and the books will be up. Again, thank you so much for all your patience and support. You guys are the best. I'm going to call it on this video, but I will see you in the next one.